If you can't see, I have the tee on from Renaissance, the merch that I got from this random dude right outside of NRG. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Antoinette, and today we're going to be doing a thorough review of Cowboy Carter. And by we, I mean me. You can go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to. Also, I will say, if you are looking for an unbiased opinion, you are not getting that from me. Beehive since 03. So just, you know, click on to the next video if you think you're going to get something that isn't what's going to be here. So just to preface my credentials, I have listened to Cowboy Carter about 6 times now since it came out Friday. Yes, I am counting the reaction videos that I've seen all on Patreon, on live listening parties, on TikTok Live, where we've listened to the full album together. So yes, I've listened to it multiple times in the span of like 4 days. So me giving a review is not well overdue, but it's expected for me. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into starting with my top 5 that I wrote down from beginning to end, and then I'll give you my first initial impression. I think I did record it, so I'll probably add clips from there. So let me go ahead and tell you my top 5. So my number 1 is Daughter. I was not expecting that particular song to be on the album. I think Daughter is the darkest I've ever heard Beat go, and the darkest song I've ever heard in a while. I think the melodies in the background, the music in the background, I don't know, the instruments and everything really sounded very beautiful. And one of the taglines or lyrics is "I'm colder than Titanic water," which sounds kind of corny when you put it in this context of like not inside of the song. When you hear her sing it, you're like, okay, actually that's very freaking cold. So at the top is Daughter. She gives us a little Ave Maria. I know it's not called Ave Maria, but she gives us a little Italian in the song, and I think it might be one of the best songs on the album. It's just so different from what you expect Beyonce to do. I mean, country is country, it is what it is, but that particular song right there for me was my favorite. Number 2 is Protector. I cried the first time I listened to it. I think it's a beautiful song. I think the lyrics are very plain. I think that's what makes it better, because everybody doesn't have these complex feelings and things like that, and it doesn't always have to be these complex words and complex things, but she's telling her children that she will be their protector even though she knows they're gonna shine on their own. That's so corny for me to like actually bring it out and say, but Protector was my favorite just because of the lyrics. I felt that they really spoke to me. I really felt them the first time I listened to them. And 3, 16 Carriages. I didn't expect to like that one, but I definitely do. I think it's the most beautiful song I've heard from any artist in a while. I think it's very vulnerable. It really pulled at the heartstrings for me, and every time I listen to it, there's just several parts of the song where I'm like, I can relate to that. If people can't relate to it, then, you know, they probably won't like the song, but that's my number 3. Number 4 is Tyrant. This was the Beyonce album. Of course we were gonna get songs like Tyrant and Sweet Honey Buckin' and everything else on the album. Of course we were gonna get that. I didn't expect anything different, mainly because it's Beyonce. So I didn't think it was gonna be pure country in the first place. I knew she was gonna put her own twist onto it, because of course, as an artist, I feel like unless you want to be stuck in that box, unless you want to fit into a certain genre or certain way, you have to play with sounds, you have to be lyrically up there, and you also have to be able to experiment and do it right. I think Tyrant was great. It's just a feel-good song. I feel like it's funny when you think about like why she turned that into a country song, but it makes sense. So Tyrant is that, and then number 5 is Yaya. It's the last one, but it's not at the bottom. Yaya, I feel like I didn't think that one would be on the album. You know, you say that about every song, but Yaya really definitely could have been on 4. If you listen to 4 and go back to the sister song to Yaya, as I like to say, which was Why Don't You Love Me. So I think this song in particular, I didn't think of it as country, and I still don't think of it as country or even like playing with some of the elements, but it really gave the 60s vibes. I really felt like that should be the opener if she does do a tour for Cowboy Carter for Act 2. That should be the opener for the show. I feel like it would bring people together and like hype up the crowd to see her come out with a bang, and I think that would be the song in their 60s outfits, maybe with cowboy hats, cowboy boots. It would be fun. Yaya is a fun song. You get up and dance. I don't know if Linda Martell came before Spaghetti or before Yaya, because I can't remember, even though I've listened to it. It's 27 songs. Give me a break. I just think that Yaya was really what we've heard from her before. Technically, if you're a B fan, you've heard some of these things where she did the Stevie Wonder tribute, where she did all of these things where you've heard this sound before, but not like this. I think this was great. It brought in Beach Boys. It brought in These Boots Are Made for Walking, and so I think Yaya is just a bop. It's a bop. that needs to be a single. I'm sorry, it needs to be a single. The people will love it. The people meaning me. It's definitely been on replay for the past few days in my home, in my earbuds. And a notable one that I have to have, like an honorable mention, would be Riverdance. I didn't know. After I did like a full thorough listen, I sat in my bed, not a full thorough listen, but once I got to the Linda Martell show of the album, I laid in my bed, had the lights off, and you know, I was listening to the songs. You already had Yaya Spaghetti, all that. Then you get Riverdance, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, what's she about to do? It's giving Irish dance, it's giving some ukulele maybe, I don't know, banjo. And I was like, okay, where we going with it? And then you get it, and I was just like, oh, it's a dance, you know, bounce on it and dance. That is what I think. Those were a few of the top songs. I will say Miley's Too Most Wanted with Beyonce was great. It sounded great. The duet is great. I really need them to perform that live along with Bodyguard. I think those would be very upbeat songs to play. And if she does do a tour like the Chillin' Circuit, I think those would fit on like a set list to have and play in like smaller venues if that's what she's going for. I don't know if an artist like Beyonce could go back to smaller venues like that and would want to go back to smaller venues, mainly money, just, you know, wanting to be able to give all of the fans a way to come and see her, which was also kind of why I was against a residency for me. I don't want to fly to Vegas. I don't want to fly to Vegas. To the Sphere, it just didn't seem like a great venue in my opinion. From the videos I've seen, it gives me a headache to even see it, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't really want to be inside of the Sphere at all. So I just think a tour is way more fun versus a residency, to where I don't think she's reached that point of her career to do like a full-blown residency yet, versus other artists who probably maybe need it to keep that hype up with their fans and things like that. Like I said, she could still do a full-blown big world tour versus other artists who may do a tour here and there. Residency might benefit them financially and better if they're in one place to have fans come to them. I don't know if I know anything about the business. I don't know if that even has to do with the album, but I just went on a tangent about it. So the musical style and themes I would say that Beyonce took was, of course, obviously country. It was really like a testament to Black history. The musical themes, I think she was more about genre bending, more about staying true to herself and her sound, especially on Jolene. And I think it was more about being vulnerable in this album. I feel like we've got more of her as an artist on this album because it's such a mixture of her being experimental, but also her being able to go out and go do stuff like this album and make it so a few of the genre and things, it's all of them. Turn the station, just like on the album, turn the station, you'll be able to hear it. Okay, so the main lyrical themes and messages, I will have to say I see this whole album as a film or a cowboy western story that she and whoever was in the writer's room and producer's room, whoever's in the room at all period, came up with. Starting at American Requiem, she's restarting, she's changing things for things that change. We have to stay the same or something like that. I don't know the full lyrics, even though I listened to it a bunch of times. But the point is, I think the lyrics really give a testament to her loving herself, her feeling like she was maybe smited a little bit when she did go to the CMAs, and her saying, you know what, I'm gonna make this, I'm gonna show you how it's done. I'm gonna give a nod to the Black women and men before me who showed y'all how it's done and still met that same ridicule, and I'm gonna come back and do it again better, and I'm gonna show you how you should do it in the future. You know, the lyrical messages that I got were she's being vulnerable, she wants to have fun, and she's just like her dad. That's what I got from it. I don't know, if y'all want deeper meaning, y'all can go to the people who do artists and album reviews and like go ahead and step into it, but this is me as a fan reading into it, not some scholar. So vocally, I don't know, I feel like 4, I'm trying to figure out vocally if 4 was her best work in my opinion. I would say Cowboy Carter, you definitely get more range of what Beyonce can do and what she's capable of. Cowboy Carter gave her more flexibility to experiment with her voice, but I also think Renaissance did that too. Vocally, Daughter, we got her singing some Italian, some opera, we got her being in lower registers, we got her making different sounds. I think Act 2 and Act 1 were vocally the best she's ever been at. She's grown, she's clearly taken care of her voice, she's clearly owned in on her craft, and I think a lot of people try to downplay that. If you think she can't sing, that's just, it's wrong. It's wrong. Like, if you don't like her voice, that's fine, it is what it is, but you think she can't sing, now you're just lying. I think with house music, besides Virgo's Groove and Plastic Off the Sofa on Renaissance, we didn't really get to hear a lot of her ballads and her doing slow singing songs and being vulnerable in that type of way. So I think Cowboy Carter, you definitely got to hear a lot of those vocal runs, you got to hear her experiment, you got to hear the whole range, you got to hear her voice. There was nobody else singing for her, you know what I'm saying? If you have not listened to Renaissance but you listened to Cowboy Carter, you would know that the transition were very well done, especially with the Linda Martell show, the Smoke Hour with Willie Nelson. I feel like us getting that sound of changing the station in old radio stations. I feel like that was genius. I feel like I've never seen another artist do so much with one singular album in the way that Beyonce did with Cowboy Carter. That's just facts for me. If you've seen somebody else, that's great, that's fine, but I've never seen somebody else do it, and I've never been as excited to hear the transitions and how they play into the next song. I think when you listen to a lot of albums, I've listened to Mariah Carey, I've listened to a few Monica's albums, I've listened to a few of any of Beyonce's peers, and the songs don't blend into each other, you know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to diss any of them, especially not Mariah Carey with her pen game so strong. I'm just saying that this is the first time I've heard an album be cohesive in that way, that they play into each other and it's just one big listening experience. Every song is so different from the other, versus where you have this country element of everything where, oh, it's storytelling, which it is, and it's an entire story in one. It's not just one song being one story and then the second song being another story. I felt like each story blended into each other and was one piece of a big movie. You feel what I'm saying? So you go from American Requiem to Blackbird, one story, start of the story, a funeral, we're starting over again. Blackbird, the girl, the lady, the woman, the black woman who's going and she's spreading her wings, and also Beyonce passing on her talents, her knowledge, her connections to country singers who have been trying to get into the scene and who have been met with something else. So you go from American Requiem, Blackbird, to Protector, to My Rose. So, you know, we're coming into this new space. I'm gonna protect you, even though I know, you know, you're gonna do good on your own, whether it's her kids, whether it's herself. You know, I'm gonna protect you, even though a rose has its thorns. Like, I could go all day. I could go all day talking about that. But I feel like it was a big story. Then we get to Jolene, which kind of does throw it off a little bit. But if this is about a woman, Beyonce, this is about her life. Even Jolene is fictional. It's fictional. It's a fictional story with some elements of her personal life. I think people don't understand that, especially on Twitter, but I deleted that app. That's neither here nor there. I think that this is a part of her life that she wanted to bring in. Dolly wanted to work with her. This was something that she wanted to do for herself. This was something that she wanted to do because Dolly asked her to. The changing of the lyrics were personal to her without being her exact story. You know what I'm saying? I don't doubt that Beyonce and Jay-Z have stretched the truth a little when it came to Jolene, when it came to Lemonade, when it came to Everything Is Love, when it came to 444. I have my conspiracies about that whole thing, but I'm saying everything is not, you know, out there. Every artist is not telling the truth. Every person is not basically putting their whole biography on the paper for the music play and then sing it. You know what I'm saying? While Jolene was not a real person, she could represent Becky, she could represent whoever you want in your life. It was a moment in time that she had to go through. So if we're telling a story, we're gonna hit those moments where somebody threatens your relationship. Your relationship is threatened by yourself. Maybe, you know, you're not having a good time. Maybe you have to, you know, go over and change it. So then we get into Daughter, and then I told you I can go in all day. But I think lyrically it all spans and it all goes together, especially when you have American Requiem starting with the same notes and the same sort of music and some of the lyrics that you have in Amen, which ends with some of the same notes and same like vocal changes. I don't know how to describe those. I'm not a producer or anything. You know, it all is one. And then if you slide into it, because Act 2 was supposed to be Act 1, you get Renaissance and you go, she's dancing, she's been abducted, she's been whatever she wants to be. So I think lyrically, I don't know if lyrically this was Beyonce's best album, but I do know as a whole cohesive project, this was one of Beyonce's best. I still have it in my heart that B-Day, for nostalgia reasons, it is what it is for me and what it is for we the people. So I was really excited to find out that Tanner Adele was on the album. I think that when it comes to collaborations, a lot of people have criticisms about who B collabs with and why she doesn't have other black female artists on her album. That is a question that only she can answer. That is something that I think really doesn't matter when she doesn't have a lot of peers or a lot of people who are in the same place or space or headspace as her when it comes to creating and musically. So I'm not just gonna collab with anyone just because you want me to or because you think I should, because that didn't even happen for her. She was mainly on male album when she was out. She was mainly collabing with other males even as a Destiny's Child member in videos at 17 years old. It wasn't like her and Monica were collabing back in the early 2000s. It wasn't like her and Brandy were collabing back in the early 2000s. It wasn't like her and Mariah Carey were collabing back in the early 2000s. So you can't say like her career has ever changed to where she stopped doing that, because if you're gonna bring DC5 in it, she was on Kelly's albums, she was on Michelle's album. Whatever happened between her, Latoya, and Latavia, that's between them. But I think collaboration wise, she's only done it with males for her own reason. That may be because they are not, I don't want to say a threat, but they are where she is musically. Now, you don't have to agree about Post Malone or whatever that is, but if he's going into country, why not grab him because he's going into country? If Tanner Adele is already in country, why not grab her her. Why would I go get Lady Gaga for a country album? She doesn't make country. Love you, Lady Gaga. What sense would that make? Why would I go ahead and get R&B artists for a country album? You know what I'm saying? And obviously I would have loved someone like K. Michelle on the album. They don't fit. They don't fit together. And so, you know, if you want to make a piece of art, if you want something to happen, go and make it yourself and make it happen, right? You could go ahead and collab with, who would she collab with? Hold on, let's see. No, I like genuinely, Beyonce's a 42-year-old woman, right? So for Blackbird, it made sense for her to pass the torch on to other people. I'm sitting here and thinking, who would she collab with right now that's on her level of music in some way, even if they're like under? That's my opinion of the collabs. I really loved Miley on the album. I felt she fit, especially because they're not in the same age, so she did add people that were younger than her. I don't know if I'm all over the place with that explanation, but you see what I'm going with. Shabuzi, I didn't know who Shabuzi was before today. I mean, before the album came out. Just also The Gift, where she collabed with so many other Black African artists. That album was on replay in my house for a very long time. Do I think she pushed any boundaries with this album? I think she pressed a lot of buttons. I think she made a lot of people hot, and she's still making a lot of people hot. The album wasn't even out like 2 hours before people were writing think pieces on Jolene. And you know, I've already said what I said about that. But I think musically, I won't say it's not anything we haven't heard before, but she puts her own spin on it. She's an artist that collaborated with so many people and they made so many great sounds. So she was able to bring things back. She was able to make some things new and put her own spin on it. And I think that's why I love the album so much. Because let me tell y'all, American Requiem almost made me turn off Spotify. I almost logged out because I didn't like it. I didn't like the bluegrass feel of it because country is not my thing, but I can appreciate a Carrie Underwood. I can appreciate them. I can appreciate Dolly Parton. So when listening to American Requiem, I almost turned it off because I was like, oh, this is not new. But that's a boundary pusher because she's making people expand. When you listen to any sort of art, I feel like it doesn't always have to be deep. If I'm looking for somebody who knew that their art was going to be controversial, they knew that what they were going to do was going to, you know, turn heads or make people talk, this will be the album that I will look for. This will be the one where I'm like, oh, it's so fun looking up deeper context and going into history and hearing this sound and wondering where that's from. Like the scratch or the tap of the nails, how that's used as acoustics, or Dolly Parton did it first or something like that. So I think it's pretty cool. Should you have to look up context for an album? No. Should you have context if you are not an ethnic person or a Black person to know a lot of the references in the album like this, where you have Linda Martell, Willie Nelson, you have Paul McCartney and the Beatles' Blackbird? Should you have that sort of context? Probably. Will it make you appreciate it more? I don't know. It depends on how big of a hater you want to be and just say you don't like it, you know? It depends. If you go into something thinking you will hate it and already having your opinion, nothing you say or do will convince you to like it, because you've already convinced yourself that every time you come to something, or every time you listen to something, or every time you interact with something, you're convincing yourself that you have to hate it more. So you just come up with reasons, you know what I'm saying? So I personally feel like this was her album that really just changed the game for her. It makes me even more excited for Act 3 and even more excited to see the choreo for this tour. I feel like the tour for Renaissance made me really love and appreciate the album more, because sometimes seeing stuff live really changes the game. The choreo was hitting for me. I think it's memorable, it was easy to replicate, and sometimes that's what brings people back. So for Cowboy Carter, I think the musical experience and whether she pushed boundaries, I definitely think so. I definitely think that it's not just a country album. Like she said, it's a Beyonce album, and she came up with what she wanted to come up with. So the replay value, I think that on their own, a lot of the songs definitely don't work. That is my only thing, to where if you listen to Daughter, it's definitely a beautiful song, but are you going to listen to like a dark song by itself all the time? Personally, I am, but some people may not. The replay value, since I've listened to it like 6 times already, like I said, I think it has a replay value, but also, like, you know, some of the songs have the context of the song before it or the song after it, so that might be very different if somebody hasn't listened to the full album and just goes and reacts to 1 song or 2 songs instead of the whole thing or going to it. Because obviously, you know, singles are singles for a reason, and 16 Carriages and Texas Hold'em were the ones that could be singles, in my opinion, without the context of the rest of the album. But you go ahead and listen to the album and you're like, oh, they also fit in there. Replay value, I think it depends on like standalone and if you have to listen to the whole thing. I don't think you should have to listen to a whole album for every single song to make sense, but there's definitely some that make sense more than others. My overall evaluation of Cowboy Carter is that it is done by musical geniuses. Beyonce, whoever helped her write, whoever helped her collab, the team behind it. She is a machine. She is someone that is preserving the culture. Whether you think that billionaires are able to preserve culture, whether you think this or that, she is someone that made me want to go and search up more of my history. Now, I'm not saying she single-handedly influenced that, because just the week before I was wanting to read books based on the Harlem Renaissance and search up a bunch by Langston Hughes and all types of people. So there's pieces of film or pieces of TV or anything that I'm like, okay, I want to go back and research. I want to go read some books, fiction or not, on this era, and I want to immerse myself in that experience. So I think, one, I want to go listen to Linda Martell's album. I want to listen to Willie Nelson or whatever he has done. I want to listen to the Beach Boys, even though I've heard a few of their songs. I just want to go back and listen to everything and see how country came to be, how it is now, and just the history of things. And I think a lot of people, especially a lot of professors, have come on TikTok and said, we're gonna do this in our class. We're gonna dissect this in our class and how this has come to be. I think that's incredibly cool, because I think when you are an artist, you want to push yourself to be better than the last thing, you know, and sometimes that's hard to top. If you made this great body of work, such as Renaissance, right? And then you're like, oh, what can I, even though she already had it done, like, oh, what can I do better? And then you go and make Cowboy Carter. That's tough to do. And I think, you know, obviously without her team behind her, she wouldn't have been able to do it. A lot of artists kind of flop when they try to make better, especially in such short periods of time. Some people, you know, with albums with 30 songs on it that sound the same, no shade, no tea. It's very hard to have 27 songs on an album and be able to have it be so cohesive and be able to have it be so musically, I don't even, masterpiece. It gives 10 out of 10. So 10 out of 10. That's what I have to say. This was her best album. Can't wait for her to sweep the CMAs. I do not care if she gets Artist of the Year. I literally didn't care last year, didn't care the year before that, didn't care the year before that. Do I think she deserves the win? There's no way you have a big artist like Beyonce make these albums and you let her win the little categories, but you think somebody like her is too big to win the biggest category, even though she deserves it. Crazy. I don't care, like the other artists, that is what that is. But I don't know, logically, it doesn't make sense to me. Like I said, I don't really watch the Grammys, so I can't say, oh, I care so much, she needs to win, blah, blah, blah. But if that's something as an artist that's important to her, or she feels that she's been slighted by or she's been slighted, then yeah, you really have to sit back and look and think, like, the biggest artist of our time has not won Album of the Year. And you can't say it's for her not writing her own songs, when I've looked at other people's albums that won Album of the Year, and there's also 3 and 4 writers on the song. What are we, if we're gonna be genuine and say it's because of that, then let it be because of that. You know what I'm saying? So that's a whole other tangent. But I did feel compelled to listen to Cowboy Carter and review it on my channel, because I did a couple weeks ago listen to Destiny Fulfilled again by Destiny's Child. It was only right for me to bring Beyonce's new album and see how far she's come vocally, just her individuality and things like that. And I think Cowboy Carter is a masterpiece that makes me want to know my history. It makes me want other people to know my history and the history of my ancestors. And I wish we would create more art like that. Like I said, art doesn't always have to be like that. It makes me want to go seek out the art that is like that. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that leaves you with something. I hope you feel safe and well, happy in your bodies, and I will see y'all next week with another video. Peace.